It's safe to say at this point that Paul George is the worst free agent signing in 2024. He signed with the Sixers for 4 years for $212 million. I'm just going to call him Podcast P because it seems at this point of his career, he cares more about his podcast than being good on the basketball court. I expected at some point in this season for Paul George to start turn the corner and looking like the Paul George I know from the Clippers, the Pacers, and the Thunder. But what have we seen this year? Not that good of numbers. He's averaging right now 16.1 points a game, 5.3 rebounds, 4.4 assists. He's shooting from the field at 42.6%. That's not good. 36.3% from three on 6.5 attempts a game from the three-point line, and 82.1% from the free throw line. Now, that's good. And the problem is right now, the Sixers are 20-34. They've lost 5 games in a row. The past 2 losses were against Toronto and Brooklyn. At this point, if I'm Philadelphia, I'm just shutting this whole season down. They just went out and signed Lonnie Walker today. That should be a sign for Paul George to get this together as fast as possible, because if these numbers keep up, I don't see a way for Paul George to recover from this and bounce back. Maybe he will, but it's just tough to defend him because at this point, it's a disaster. We know that Joel Embiid's been in and out of the lineup. We'll see if he can be healthier in the second half of the season. The Sixers, surprisingly, are still a game and a half behind the 10th spot. And at this point, is it even worth getting to the play-in spot? I think they should just completely tank and just start all over. Just build around Tyrese Maxey. He's the only one playing the most. He's given his effort, playing hard. But unfortunately, Paul George has not lived up to the expectations that Philadelphia thought he would fulfill. And when you look at Paul George, the expectation was, well, he could be a reliable number 2 options on some nights where Maxey's either hurt or isn't doing his job, or, not playing good basketball, I should say. Or, Joel Embiid is missing games. Maybe he could be the number 1 option for a period of time during the game where you need a closer, somebody who can get you a bucket, or somebody who can give you a 10-minute stretch where he's scoring the basketball, making plays. But Paul George has not done that whatsoever. And it's just surprising at this point. I know he has the injury, I believe, to his finger, and he said like that's been bothering him. And it's just crazy because even though I understand that injuries are a part of sports and it does affect your performance on the basketball court, the numbers have been the same even before the injury. That's the problem. Looking at other guys around the NBA, let's check out Norman Powell, who has fit in like a glove as their starting guard. Norman Powell, the leading scorer in points for the Clippers, 24.2 points a night, 3.6 rebounds, 2.2 assists. He's shooting from the field 49.6%, 42.8% from three on 7.8 attempts. He's playing better. People were making an argument for Norman Powell to be an all-star this year. No conversation about Paul George being those same conversations. That's really nasty work and not a good sign for Paul George going forward. Do I pray for the Sixers' demise? No, because I at least want to see Joel Embiid make a conference finals at some point. Hopefully that still happens with the Sixers, or he can go to another franchise and prove that he is a Hall of Fame. I mean, he already is to me, but can you make a conference finals? I know he's had his injuries, but he's had other opportunities where he's had a good roster and he didn't show up when you needed Joel Embiid. This whole thing is a complete mess. Now let's look at Tobias Harris. I'm pointing these guys out because, Norman Powell is doing fine. The Pistons are the 6th seed, and so are the Clippers. It's pretty funny how they're both in the playoff mix while the Sixers are on the outside looking in. But going to Tobias Harris, he's averaging 13.5 points a game, 5.9 rebounds, 2.2 assists. He's shooting better from the field than Paul George at 46%. That's hilarious to me. He's not shooting as well from three, but he's only attempting about 4 a night. And he's shooting from the free throw line 87%. So these guys seem to be having better seasons than Paul George. If you want to talk about the 3-point shooting percentage, that's fine, but Harris isn't taking as many than Paul George. At this point, when it comes to the Sixers, you just got to be honest with yourself. Is it worth trying to make the play-in and going up against the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Boston Celtics? Like, just be honest. Do you think they're going to get out of the first round? If you don't think so, just tank, shut down Joel Embiid, shut down Paul George. And just looking at the upcoming schedule for the Sixers, it's hard to be confident in this team. They got to go up first off against the Boston Celtics. and they'll probably get destroyed. Maybe they'll make it competitive and they'll get a surprise and win. But then they got to play Brooklyn, Chicago. They just lost to Brooklyn the other night. Hopefully they have some pride in that game because they're at home. But then you got to go to New York. The Warriors look rejuvenated. You got the Blazers who are playing good basketball. I know they've had a few losses lately, but still they've been playing better. You got to go to Minnesota, who's been doing well. They've had a few head scratching losses lately, but they've been turning the corner. I think they won 9 of the past 13 games. Then you got to go to Boston, Utah, Atlanta, Toronto, Indiana, go to Dallas, Houston, OKC, San Antonio, Atlanta, New Orleans. Tough road stretch outside of the Pelicans and the Hawks, but I don't know. At this point, I feel like the Sixers should just restart. It just hasn't worked out. It's a tough situation because Joel Embiid has been reports about he might need another knee surgery. And should you push him further? I wouldn't do it. If you're going to tank, I get it. Get a really good draft pick. If you end up with a number 1 pick, you look really good, or a top 4 pick, in my opinion. For the Sixers right now, they're in a dire situation. Paul George has been a complete disaster for them. And if you're on a podcast all the time, we're just going to call you Podcast P at this point. That doesn't mean he's not a caliber player. It doesn't mean he's a bad basketball player. It's just this season, it's been a travesty. We expected Paul George to be the number 2, number 3 option. We expected the Sixers to be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, and none of that has come to fruition. And when you have one of your guys who signed this $212 million contract, shoot 42% from the field, and averaging 16 points, it's not good enough, especially when we know what Paul George is capable of. Just looking at his previous seasons, I'm going to go back and just review what Paul George is capable of so people can remember that, hey, he's not a bust. He's just not having a great season. But going to his overall numbers, obviously with the Pacers, he was great. Remember his Eastern Conference Finals run 23 points. He went to OKC, averaged 28 points. That was one of his greatest seasons. The Clippers, he was more the number 2 option, but this is the lowest of lows for him. And I just feel bad for Sixers fans because, man, you guys are really going through it. You thought the process was going to finish this year. Even when they lost to the Celtics 2 seasons ago, I would feel good coming into 2024. And the injury to Joel Embiid, he was looking like he was going to win his second MVP. And then that injury happened. At this point, just blow it up. I mean, what else do you have to look forward to? Guys who are going to be in and out of the lineup. Maxey being upset because there's no consistency. I think at this point, just build around him and figure out what you're going to do from there. I like McCain. He was a solid rookie. He was going to be a possible Rookie of the Year candidate. Unfortunately, he had his injuries. And can somebody just tell the medical staff in Philadelphia to get their act together? I mean, they've just had some bad luck. I mean, my goodness, so much misfortune this year. But you have to wonder, is it the medical staff that's causing us? I'm obviously trolling. I'm not serious about that. But yeah, the Sixers are just in a tough spot because you have this contract with Paul George. You're locked up, and I don't know if anybody wants him. So maybe you go into next season, you try to build up his trade value and see if a team will bite to get him, and you get a few assets back. Don't expect a lot back, but you got to do something, right? So we'll see how this all plays out. If I'm the Sixers, I'm just trying to tank and start over. Hope you guys enjoyed this video today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the play of Paul George this season. Do you think it's the worst contract you've seen in NBA history? And do you think it was the worst deal you saw this offseason? Also, do you think Paul George is going to play better in the second half? We shall see. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.